Hi there, this is Suzanne from the Whispering Gallery podcast, and I wanted to share a story before we release the next episodes. This is kind of a mini-sode and is a lead-in to a story about a very special painter who would paint plein air, often amidst his flowering garden. The next episode is Le Fantôme des Peintres, the painter's ghost. This painter planned his extraordinary garden in Giverny, France, even filling out the forms necessary and going through the red tape to gain official approval to tap into a tributary to the Seine River that flows out to the English Channel, in order to create ponds for his sublime waterlilies. While he was a painter of light, the story I'm going to read to you will take us into the depths of the underworld. The story is one you may have heard in elementary or middle school. It's a Greek myth, the story of the mother and daughter, Demeter and Persephone. In France, it seems the winters, at least in the area of Paris, are mild compared to the valley where Emily and I live, which is located along the western part of the Rocky Mountains. We are usually in the 30s to teens in Fahrenheit in the winter, while in Paris, they stay in the 40s according to ParisPerfect.com. Giverny is in the northern hemisphere, and this artist's gardens included flowers, trees, water lily ponds, a bridge, chickens, and a well-planned vegetable garden across town. The earth shows such happiness through flowers. Is that shows, or could it be brings such happiness? With iris, peony, and the blooming flowers of summer. The following quotes are from Claude Monet, and they really show us how he felt about his garden. Quote, "My garden is my most beautiful masterpiece." Unquote. He also said, quote, "I perhaps owe having become a painter to flowers." Unquote. Demeter is the goddess of the harvest and grain, and Persephone, the goddess of spring. And well, I won't spoil a good story. Without any other delays, let's read the story of Demeter and Persephone from a Kindle copy of D'Aller's Book of Greek Myths. Persephone grew up on Olympus, and her gay laughter rang through the brilliant halls. She was the daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest, and her mother loved her so dearly she could not bear to have her out of her sight. When Demeter sat on her golden throne, her daughter was always on her lap. When she went down to earth to look after her trees and fields, she took Persephone. Wherever Persephone danced on her light feet, flowers sprang up. She was so lovely and full of grace that even Hades, who saw so little, noticed her and fell in love with her. He wanted her for his queen, but he knew that her mother would never consent to part with her. So he decided to carry her off. One day, as Persephone ran about in the meadow gathering flowers, she strayed away from her mother and the attending nymphs. Suddenly, the ground split open, and up from the yawning crevice came a dark chariot drawn by black horses. At the reins stood grim Hades. He seized the terrified girl, turned his horses, and plunged back into the ground. A herd of pigs rooting in the meadow tumbled into the cleft, and Persephone's cries for help died out as the ground closed again, as suddenly as it had opened up. Up in the field a little swineherd stood and wept over the pigs he had lost, while Demeter rushed wildly about in the meadow, looking in vain for her daughter, who had vanished without leaving a trace. With the frightened girl in his arms, Hades raced his snorting horses down away from the sunlit world. Down and down they sped on the dark path to his dismal underground palace. He led weeping Persephone in, seated her beside him on a throne of black marble, and decked her with gold and precious stones, But the jewels brought her no joy. She wanted no cold stones. She longed for warm sunshine and flowers, and her golden trust mother. Dead souls crowded out from cracks and crevices to look at their new queen, while ever more souls came across the Styx, and Persephone watched them drink from a spring under dark poplars. It was the spring of Lethe, and those who drank from its waters forgot who they were and what they had done on earth. Rhadamanthus, a judge of the dead, dealt out punishment to the souls of great sinners. They were sentenced to suffer forever under the whips of the avenging Erinyes. Heroes were led to the Elysian fields, where they lived happily forever in never-failing light. Around the palace of Hades there was a garden where whispering poplars and weeping willows grew. They had no flowers and bore no fruit, and no birds sang in their branches. There was only one tree in the whole realm of Hades that bore fruit. That was a little pomegranate tree. The gardener of the underworld offered the tempting pomegranates to the queen, but Persephone refused to touch the food of the dead. Wordlessly, she walked through the garden at silent Hades' side, and slowly her heart turned to ice. Above, on earth, Demeter ran about searching for her lost daughter, and all nature grieved with her. Flowers wilted, trees lost their leaves, and the fields grew barren and cold. In vain did the plow cut through the icy ground. Nothing could sprout and nothing could grow, while the goddess of the harvest wept. People and animals starved, and the gods begged Demeter again to bless the earth, but she refused to let anything grow until she had found her daughter. Bent with grief, Demeter turned into a gray old woman. She returned to the meadow where Persephone had vanished and asked the sun if he had seen what had happened, but he said no. Dark clouds had hidden his face that day. She wandered around the meadow, and after a while she met a youth whose name was Triptolemus. He told her that his brother, a swineherd, had seen his pigs disappear into the ground and had heard the frightened screams of a girl. Demeter now understood that Hades had kidnapped her daughter, and her grief turned to anger. She called to Zeus and said that she would never again make the earth green if he did not command Hades to return Persephone. Zeus could not let the world perish, and he sent Hermes down to Hades, bidding him to let Persephone go. Even Hades had to obey the orders of Zeus, and sadly he said farewell to his queen. Joyfully, Persephone leaped to her feet, but as she was leaving with Hermes, a hooting laugh came from the garden. There stood the gardener of Hades, grinning. He pointed to a pomegranate from which a few of the kernels were missing. Persephone, lost in thought, had eaten the seeds, he said. Then dark Hades smiled. He watched Hermes lead Persephone up to the bright world above. He knew that she must return to him, for she had tasted the food of the dead. When Persephone again appeared on earth, Demeter sprang to her feet with a cry of joy and rushed to greet her daughter. No longer was she a sad old woman, but a radiant goddess. Again she blessed her fields, and the flowers bloomed anew, and the grain ripened. "Dear child," she said, "never again shall we be parted. Together we shall make all nature bloom." But joy soon was changed to sadness, for Persephone had to admit that she had tasted the food of the dead, and must return to Hades. However, Zeus decided that mother and daughter should not be parted forever. He ruled that Persephone had to return to Hades and spend 1 month in the underworld for each seed she had eaten. Every year, when Persephone left her, Demeter grieved. Nothing grew, and there was winter on earth. But as soon as her daughter's light footsteps were heard, the whole earth burst into bloom. Spring had come. As long as mother and daughter were together, the earth was warm and bore fruit. Demeter was a kind goddess. She did not want mankind to starve during the cold months of winter, when Persephone was away. She lent her chariot laden with grain to Triptolemus, the youth who had helped her to find her lost daughter. She told him to scatter her golden grain over the world and teach men how to sow it in spring and reap it in fall, and store it away for the long months when again the earth was barren and cold. So why this story? mainly because of the tie to the flowers blooming during times of happiness, and Monet enjoying the flowers so much and painting them and finding his inspiration there. There was a mysterious photo taken of a ghost of a man at the Cleveland Museum of Art. Could it really have been Claude Monet, as they say? Stay tuned to ponder the evidence for yourself. Thank you for your patience, as some of these episodes take a bit to research, comprehend what we're learning, and then share with you. Find out more about the mysterious sighting of the ghost in the museum and the artist Claude Monet in the coming episodes. We'll talk to you soon.